Today, we're honored to have Josh Mahinay, the CEO of PhilSEED. He'll talk on the topic alleviating poverty among cacao farmers in Zamboanga Sibugay. This is most interesting. Last week, we had the third national conference of Cacao that 1,400 participants. I was able to go. And there, what was the most interesting highlight is that if you planted cacao in between the coconut trees, the farmer's income would increase by more than 5 times. Round numbers, from 250,000 pesos per hectare per year to about 145,000 pesos per hectare per year. And the tragedy is that 2/3 of our more than 3.5 million hectares have nothing planted in between. So they make 25,000 approximately, correct? And if you only planted cacao, each hectare could jump from 25,000 to about 140,000. And this is something we should address. With our Secretary Agriculture Chula at the helm, is pushing this hard. And we hope today will be an additional impetus to that conference. Towards the end, I'll give you some contact numbers of the Cacao Association that you can call from around the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're really into this. The head of this group is the Russian consul to the Philippines, Consul Army Garcia. And she's assembled not only this 24-hour hotline, but also a weekly free cacao forum where the new technologies are given. I'd like now go to introducing our resource speaker. Extremely interesting. He did his degree, Master of Science in Social Innovation Entrepreneurship. Innovation Entrepreneurship, I like to emphasize that we need new ideas in agriculture. At the London School of Economics and Political Science. Then he did a Master's in Entrepreneurship, again, emphasize entrepreneurship in Asian Institute of Management. Why do you emphasize entrepreneurship? Because this is what we need in agriculture. We need new ideas and we need to get agriculture into business for sustainable development. He's a social development professional. And of course, as I mentioned, the CEO of SEED Incorporated, which focuses on one thing. It's the same thing our foundation focuses on. It's poverty alleviation. And that would be right now concentrating in Region 9. He's been awarded many times. He's advocating social business as a model for addressing poverty and inequality. Business, not charity, but business to be sustainable. And right now he consults with various NGOs on poverty alleviation corporation. I'd like to say that we're going to ask our speaker, Josh Mahinay, to spend 5 to 10 minutes first on his personal background, how he got into this, what made him get into this field, what motivates him. Because we intend to have a personal connection with him, with the speakers. We speak to them after the forum, and we make deals with him so that we can, for properly propagate and spread the good word he's going to share with us. Because as our department chair said, our job is not just to give technology, but to make sure that technology gets into action and, in fact, alleviates poverty. So 5 to 10 minutes, Josh, and then going to your presentation. In your presentation, Josh, please say how we, the audience here, global audience, can help propagate what you do. We have contacts with banks, with government institutions, with other NGOs, etc. And we want to use that to propagate what you have. And we like to measure ourselves, not in terms of the talk in forums, in terms of the action that comes from the forum. And that is relevant also to the worldwide audience, where you might have, relatives here in the Philippines who may want to get into some of these technologies. And finally, and we'll start that out so we don't forget, we'll ask you to give your contact number so people around the world can call you. No need to go through us, just go straight to him. So on that note, let's start. Number 1, your phone number. Number 2, your background. And number 3, your presentation, including how we can help you. Okay, Josh, can we start with your contact number, please?
Hi, thank you, Sir Ernie, for inviting me. Thank you, MAP Agribusiness and Concept Development, for having me for today's session. My contact number, I actually have my contact number at the end of my presentation, but I can also give
Great.
it right now. Okay,
Okay.
should I give it right now?
Yes, why not? Why not? So people can
Okay.
write. Yeah.
Okay, so my contact number, my local number in the Philippines is 0917-899-1791.
Okay.
And my
I want
email
to repeat
address.
for the audience to get your pens, etc. And just to get it clear, because this is the most important thing to create action
Yeah.
from this. I will say it again, Josh. 0917-899-1791. Is that correct?
Perfect. Perfect. Yes.
Okay. So please proceed with your life. I want to know about you. We want to know about your life. How you got into
Well,
this. Congratulate you with all the skills you have been
thank
giving
you.
to help poverty. My God. Please go ahead, Josh.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for asking that because I like that this is starting with a more personal conversation. My name is Josh Mahinay. You can call me Josh. I grew up in the southern part of the Philippines, actually in Zamboanga Sibugay. That's why my project is primarily focused right there in Zamboanga Sibugay right now. My parents were farmers, but we did not own land. My parents were tenant farmers. I grew up in the family of nine children, and I am the youngest in the family. So growing up, I would say that I came face to face with poverty at a very young age. And I remember every Saturday when we go to the farm, my father would tell me that, son, you have to study hard so that you don't become a farmer like me, and end up being poor. So that was a constant conversation with me and my father every weekend. And somehow that motivated me and challenged me to really work hard, pursue education, and even if life was challenging, through the help of a lot of people, I was able to complete my education, graduated college. I had a chance to work in the United States for, I think, 7 to 8 years. And then I moved back to the Philippines. I pursued further education. And I also went to London to study social innovation and entrepreneurship. Just a additional background story. When I was in London, I was having coffee in the streets of London, and I read this news online about the farmers and the fishers being the poorest in the country. That was not shocking to me because we've known that for a long time. But for some reason, something ticked in my mind, in my heart, and I decided that after my stint in London, I want to go back to the Philippines and spend my next 10 years of really trying to crack the problem of poverty in the Philippines. Because I think from my experience and my observation in different contexts globally, uh, there are better approaches and ways to address poverty in the country. Yeah, so that was kind of my short background. And through that inspiration, although I've been working in the social development space for the past 10 years, particularly last year, I decided to really focus on agriculture because when I went back to my town or to my village, I still see the same faces. My father's friends and neighbors, and they are still doing the same thing and still struggling in life. So I thought that with the privileges that I have right now, getting a good education, getting a global exposure, I might be able to share something special to my community, to my people in Guinoman, and particularly, and hopefully in the entire region of Region 9. So that's how I got started in last year, I think July or May. We launched a PhilSEED. PhilSEED stands for Philippine Social Empowerment and Equity Development Foundation, and primarily focus on the social and economic empowerment of the farmers and fishers, because we know, and I will talk about it later, that the farmers and fishers are the poorest sector in our society, with the poverty incidence rate of 30%. That is almost double the poverty incidence rate of the Philippines, and actually more than triple the poverty incidence of the world. So that's basically the background. And I'm very excited to share with you what I have prepared today for everybody.
Well, please proceed. But before you do, I'd like to say that what you said is very inspiring. Especially your daddy said, get out of farming. And you put your heart into it. You studied in the States and in London. You came back. You didn't come back to Makati. You came back to where you came from. It's truly inspiring that you got what God gave you and you're giving it to the people, and you're spreading it with your seed, PhilSEED organization. So please proceed, Josh. Please proceed. Thank you for that nice background. Please proceed.
Thank you. Allow me to share my screen. Again, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to share what we are doing and currently doing in Zamboanga Sibugay. This is something very special to me because I'm doing something for my community. I came from this community, a small village called Guinoman in Zamboanga Sibugay. As I mentioned earlier, my parents were farmers, tenant farmers to be specific. And of course, we know that I think majority of the farmer parents in the Philippines don't want their children to be farmers. And that is also my personal experience. So I take this as a very personal advocacy to really try to help empower the community so that not just for the future of the Philippines in terms of food security, but really encouraging and inspiring the young people to go back to farming if we can show that there's viability in farming. So my topic today is about our journey in Zamboanga Sibugay with PhilSEED, elevating poverty among cacao farmers in Zamboanga Sibugay. First, I would give a little bit of a refresher on poverty because I think this is a very important grounding in our conversation today. As we know, poverty is very complex. It's multidimensional and multifaceted. We cannot put poverty in a singular box. In the same manner that we should look at solving poverty or providing solutions to the poverty, considering its complex, multidimensional, multifaceted nature. A snapshot of the poverty globally, 8.8% of the global population is poor in 2021. No, you can see the numbers there, but basically, when we talk about poverty, we can say that the Philippine government and the private and the public sectors are actually spending quite substantial amount of money for welfare and development spending. Example for the government in 2023, according to DBM, 1.67 trillion was spent on welfare and development spending. And just an example of how the non-government organization is also helping in the poverty alleviation movement, the Association of Foundation in particular, in 2022 spent 15.8 billion. Now, this is a collective spending by all its members. Now, the big question is that where do we stand on poverty, on war and poverty in the Philippines? And I would personally believe, and you can agree or disagree with me, but I think that the war on poverty in the Philippines is far from over, and we are not winning against it so far. As far as I remember, since little, we've been in this war against poverty, but I think that there's still a lot that needs to be done in that particular department. For the poverty snapshot in the Philippines, for example, we know that 18.1% of our population are poor, according to World Bank in 2022. That's close to 20 million people. There was a recent SWS survey that was released, I think, last month or 2 months ago. And the service says that 58% of the Philippine population self-identify as poor, and 12% are borderline poor. So technically, if you look at it, around 70% of the population are saying that they are poor. And with this, 10% are experiencing involuntary hunger, according to SWS in 2023. And again, for the most affected sector of the society, it's the farmers. As I mentioned earlier, the farmers and fishers are extremely poor, with the poverty incidence rate of 30%, according to the PSA in 2022. This is actually almost double the poverty incidence rate of the Philippines, which is 18.1, and more than triple the poverty incidence rate of the world, which is 8.8%. So if you will try to visualize how poor the farmers and the fishers are in the Philippines, you can look at we are 3-story below the ground. So hence, I think this very important conversation that needs to happen around poverty alleviation. And we need to find concrete solutions and scalable solutions on how to address this. So very quickly, the poverty incidence rate, again, is very high. There's also a lack of access to capital. According to data, only 6% of the loanable amount in the banking system of the Philippines went to agriculture, and specifically, not with the small-scale agriculture or farmers in the Philippines. The other thing that we always talk about, of course, is the post-harvest facility. We actually lost 10 to 50% of our commodity value because we don't have enough post-harvest facility in the country. Of course, this is a very important conversation that has to happen as well about the climate change. In fact, when I visited Zamboanga Sibugay, a lot of the rice farms there were not anymore used because most of them were flooded already, and the farmers really did not have any alternative on what to do with their rice farms that are currently flooded. The Philippines ranked very high in the most affected countries in the world as far as the impact of climate change. Of course, we talk about the access to market as well. And when we talk about access to market, it is not just the infrastructure, but actually there is a felt need about the gaps that we are experiencing with the farmers, not just on the infrastructure, but also on the knowledge gap. For example, a lot of farmers are, a lot of activities are not connected or based on what is demanded by the market. And in terms of innovation in the Philippines and agriculture, we're also very much lagging behind our neighbors in the Southeast Asia. The Philippine productivity factor is at 1.7 based on the data on 2021. That is actually behind most of the Southeast Asian countries except the Timor-Leste and the Laos. So there has to be an actions taken as well in terms of innovation in agriculture. Now, we know the importance of agriculture in our economy. Just for point of comparison, in the ASEAN community, agriculture contributes 32% on employment and 22% on their GDP. But if you look at the Philippines, we are quite low in terms of employment contribution and in terms of GDP contribution. So we are not at par within the average of the ASEAN community. So we have to do something about it. Now, when I after finishing my studies at the London School of Economics, I went back to my community, and I had a chance to meet with the farmers. They were my parents' neighbors, and they are still living in the same community where we live. And I got to speak to some of them, and they are very shocking, or I would say very challenging or interesting findings that we found out when we visited. We found out that in Zamboanga Sibugay alone, in the 6 barangays that we visited, there's approximately 500 to 700 hectares of abandoned and unproductive cacao farms. This is according to the data of DAR, DNR, and DTI. But the recent data shared by the Provincial Agriculture Office, or PAO, of Zamboanga Sibugay shows an estimated 3,750 hectares of land planted with 3 million cacao seedlings between 2016 and 2019. So around 5 to 7 years ago, farmers in the province were given cacao seedlings to plant as part of the public and private collaboration in relation to the Enhanced National Breeding Program. But based on the conversation with the farmers reported that these cacao farms are totally or mostly abandoned in unproductive. Of all the farmers that we spoke to, they've never earned a single centavo out of their farms after planting the cacao. Farmers reported also that they are indebted. They ended up in debt. On average, based on our conversation with the cooperatives, on average, a cooperative has 7 million debt with Land Bank. So from that problem, I cannot. I try to understand the challenges of the farmers. And if you look at the current landscape of the market of cacao, as Ernie mentioned, there is a huge potential. So you have 700, from our research, 700 hectares of land that are planted with cacao, abandoned and unproductive. Yet, if you look at the market landscape of cacao globally and even locally, there's a huge supply gap. I'm sure everybody knows that in the Philippines, for example, our demand fulfillment stands only at merely 10%. And the global market is estimated at $41.1 billion. So if you have the big market potential globally and locally, the big question is, why are the farmers in Zamboanga Sibugay who planted cacao trees are poor? Why are they not making money? Why are they not earning from their farm? Now, cacao also has a great potential, not just in the market, but also of agricultural viability. We know this for a fact that the cacao thrives in the Philippine climate very good. And it exhibits a strong climate resilience. I discovered, I'm not an expert in cacao, but I discovered that cacao actually is very climate resilient. It does not require a lot of maintenance, and it can actually grow or outlive us and can continue to produce an income for the family. Of course, for sustainability advantage, cacao also, aside from the economic, it can also provide an environmental benefit. Now, that is basically the inspiration of PhilSEED, or Philippine Social Empowerment and Equity Development Foundation. The tagline is really farming the future, because I realized that a lot of the things that we do in the Philippines are mostly symbolic in nature. And if we really wanted to help and empower the farmers and fishers, we really need to start farming the future, like really putting our hands, dipping our hands into the mud and really working on the ground, stepping out of our comfort zone in our 25th floor and really going down to the basement to really understand the root cause of things.
This one or this one?
This is the number.
No, I'm asking what you like to do, this one.
So
This one.
basically the theory of change that PhilSEED is trying to address is shown in brief like this. Now, the problem with the cacao farmers is that they're not making enough income for their families. In fact, based on our initial research, the farmers on average are only making 1,500 pesos per week, or 6,000 pesos per month. The solution that we're thinking is really to provide an ecosystem that supports the needs of the farmers and empower them to succeed. And the impact that we're looking to achieve is really economically and socially empowered Filipino farmers who care for the environment. So the strategic focus that we're thinking, because of course, poverty alleviation is a very massive problem. And given the limited resources, energy, and even expertise of people, we thought that it would be strategic for us to address poverty where it counts for those that impact the most. In Mindanao, because again, 70% of those who rated themselves poor are from Mindanao, and with farmers and fishers, because they're the most affected sector in the Philippines now when it comes to poverty. And it also makes sense for me to do it in Zamboanga Sibugay, because I came from the province, but the overall goal is to really work around the entire region of Region 9. So what we did is that we did direct investment because we wanted to really validate and pilot the study to kind of really prove that the cacao farm rehabilitation of the existing farms in Zamboanga Sibugay is a potential and viable model for poverty alleviation. So through the help of our friends in the network, we put a direct investment of 1.2 million pesos to help the 15 cacao farmers in Barangay Guinoman, the cacao farmers that we first spoke to. So with this investment, this is the entire program design that we implemented. It's an 18-month solution. It's not an 18-month solution to poverty, but it's an 18-month solution so that the farmers after 18 months can jumpstart and start creating their way out or threading their way out of poverty. Because of the provisions of support with the entire 18-month program. It started with research and social problem validation. And then after talking to the farmers and understanding their problem, we designed a solution targeted to them. And we organized the community, except that in some communities are already organized into cooperative. And then we implement the program. The implementation starts with training the farmers, and then rehabilitating their farms, and then providing biofertilizers, monitoring the farm, to harvest, fermentation, drying, and selling of the beans. So this entire program happens within the 18-month timeline. So with the investment that we made in the community, with high probability, a direct investment of 1.2 million or 83,000 pesos per farmer per 1 hectare can take 50 farmers, farming families out of poverty in 3 to 5 years. This is based on our economic forecast. And I'm going to show you later the initial insights that we generated from the community. The economic projection indicates that the beneficiary will be able to graduate from food poverty and poverty threshold, and eventually will have a decent life in 3 to 5 years, underpinned by the enhanced farm productivity and potential farm expansion. Currently, as I mentioned, based on our initial grounding, the farmers, most of the farmers on average are making 1,500 a week or 6,000 pesos a month. Hence, all the farmers actually that we're engaging right now are considered food poor, because you have to at least make 8,379 pesos a month to be able to at least put food on the table for your family of 3 to 5. Currently, based on the data that we have, all the farmers that we are engaging with are food poor. So the goal of the program is that in the next 3 to 5 years, we can graduate these farmers from food poverty to poverty threshold. Poverty threshold, according to PSA, is 12,030 pesos. So the goal is for the farmers to make more than 12,030 pesos. And eventually, due to enhanced productivity and expansion of the farm, we are looking at the farmers having a decent life, which means that for a family of 3 to 5, at least they are making 39,000 pesos to 42,000 pesos a month for a family of 3 to 5. So that's the goal. Initially, when we were at the farm, we noticed that the farmers are disorganized. So we organized them informally into Cacao, Guinoman Cacao Farmers Association. We realized and we noticed that since the activities commenced in that community, we noticed a strengthened community ties and revitalized spirit of cooperation. The Filipino spirit of bayanihan was very evident. There was also a paradigm shift in the farming community skill set and motivation and outlook, reflecting on the resurgence of hope and the renewed zeal for agriculture. We have a lot of conversations with the farmers and documenting conversations. A lot of the farmers were saying that they really feel that there's no hope in agriculture anymore. In fact, most of their farms, not just cacao farms, are already abandoned. So the farmers would have to go to a town to work in a construction and leave their farms because they really feel that the situation is very hopeless in their community as far as farming is concerned. So with the project that we first implemented as a pilot test or a beta test, we learn or we notice early stage intervention shows that there's a strong financial gains. There are two frameworks that we implemented in the program. The first one is the Cash for Work program. When we went to the farms and we spoke to the farmers, initially we told them that we are going to provide them with all the equipments, with all the biofertilizers and capacity building support, but they'll have to work in their farms. That is kind of the concept for a sweat equity, right? But when we spoke to the farmers, one farmer said that, Kuya Josh, if I'm going to work in my farm today as my contribution or sweat equity, I will not earn money at the end of the day and I cannot buy food for my family. So that is when I realized that we have to also kind of change and assess our concept of sweat equity, because the farmers are really poor. They can't afford to work in their own farm because they will not make money at the end of the day. So given the experience with other organizations like Chuchi Foundation, for example, and a lot of documented Cash for Work program abroad, we realized that we have to invest in the labor cost of the farmers while they are working in their farm and while their neighbors are helping them work in their farm. So that is where the concept of the Cash for Work program came. The second one, of course, is the farmers making money from their harvest, and all the investments that are needed to be done for the next 18 months will be free of charge to them. So basically, the 83,000 pesos will be given to them as a form of support, either in labor, either in fertilizer, either in equipments and capacity building support. So one of the things that we noticed immediately after 5 months of program implementation was is an increase of the farmers' income from 30 to 34%. On average, the farmers are currently making 2,500 pesos from the Cash for Work program. So that is 2,500 pesos on top of what they're already earning in the family, which is on average 6,000 pesos. And again, as I mentioned, all these farms were previously unproductive and abandoned. But just 5 months after the intervention, we have documented 1 hectare of land with 800 cacao trees has counted over 2,000 new pods. Or these are the pods that are sleeved. You know, when the cacao trees are flowering, after a few weeks, it will start to show small pods. And those pods, when it reaches a battery size, then it has to be a sleeve in order to protect it from infestation. Now, this is what it looks like. Before the intervention, this is a picture of a cacao that was obviously abandoned and unproductive, and we did some sanitation and pruning, and then it started bearing flowers, showing flowers, and it started bearing small pods to bigger pods to a lot of pods in the trees up to the harvest. So these pictures that you are seeing right now are actually pictures of the first harvest in the first farm that we held last May. I think it's worth mentioning as well that before we started the intervention in the community, we want to make sure that we have an end-to-end solution to them, including the market. So in the picture, if you can see the lady on the left, to the left, she is Miss Doloritz, and she is our buyer. And she signed a memorandum of understanding with our farmers that she's going to buy the beans at the highest market price possible. So during the first harvest, she went to see the farm. She harvested the pods herself and assessed the quality of the harvest and the beans. So this is very interesting, and this is something I'd like to focus on because the way that we are doing the program in Sibugay is very much research-based. It's very much data-driven, and we record every single detail that is coming into our team every single day, including the number of workers in the farm, the number of minutes that it will take them to clean the tree, the amount of fertilizer that goes into a tree, and the cost of all these activities, including the income. So based from our initial data, because we started last quarter of last year, and so the first harvest was really scheduled on May. So this particular farmer, for example, her name is Nanay Linlin. For May, on average, for the 10th month average of Cash for Work program, she made 2,500. Some months she's making 7,000, some months she's making 9,000, some months she's making 2,000. But we got the entire 10th month average because the work is not constant every day. Some days you need to work, some days you don't have to work. But more interesting to the data that we gathered is the contribution of harvest or the sale of wet beans. Before we came into the community, in the neighboring barangays, some farmers are able to harvest beans and they are being purchased at 40 pesos per kilo for wet beans. But right now, the running buying price for wet beans is around 100 to 110. So with that, last May, she harvested for the first time cacao pods from her farm, and she made 2,650 pesos. So in total, for the month of May, from the Cash for Work program and from the harvest of the beans, she made an additional income of 5,150. And if you look at June, she made a little bit lower. And in July, she also made a little bit lower, but it is within the 5,000 range. Pre-program implementation average family income, as I mentioned, is 1,500. But this particular farmer, she's making 2,000 pesos a week or 8,000 a month. Again, if you look at the income figure, this particular farmer is considered food poor because you have to make 8,379 to at least put food in the table. So technically, this farmer is considered as food poor. The current average income with the intervention, including the additional income, is 13,150 pesos. 12,535 pesos in 12,895 pesos respectively. I'm trying to say is that on top of what she is already making and the family is collectively making, which is 8,000, she got an extra income of around 5,000 every month from month of May, June, and July. And actually, surprisingly, up to the month of August, the farm is still harvesting even up to now. So with the current average income of 13, 12, and 12,000 respectively for the past 3 months, we can actually say that the farmer is already not just out of food poverty, but the farmer, based on the PSA metric, is already out of poverty threshold, because poverty threshold is 12,030 pesos for a family of 3 to 5, according to PSA, although I feel like that is a little bit lower. So based from this data, we can say that farmer number 1 is already out of poverty in the months of May to July. Now, we know that cacao peak seasons have, cacao harvests have 2 peak seasons. It is around this month, in around the month of November, December, October, November, December. So it is safe to assume that if this trend will continue to be the case, the farmer Quadra, who is previously food poor, with the intervention can easily be out of poverty half of the year. That's 6 months out of poverty out of 12 months. So we just have to find a way on how to fill in the gap for the other half of the year. And it's worth mentioning as well that this is just only for the cacao. And Sir Ernie mentioned earlier about the new data that if coconut is intercropped with cacao, the farmer can easily double or triple or even like multiple times increase the income in the farm. So this is really promising because now we have a data to show that cacao rehabilitation in that part of the Philippines with existing hectareage of cacao farms can potentially be a tool to elevate people from poverty. Now, I want to talk about poverty alleviation framework that we are using in the implementation of our program. When we came to the community, the standard logical concept is when we go to the community and try to help, the first thing that we need to do is security and well-being, right? We have to provide the immediate needs or needs of the family. For example, food, health, clothing, to make them feel secure and secure in the family to feel secure and the community. But what we notice, and we kind of like make an adjustment in the approach, because what we noticed when we went to the community is that the people feel that they have more incentive to participate in a poverty alleviation initiative if they feel that they actually have a prospect to increase their income. So they appreciate the medicine, they appreciate the food, they appreciate the goods that we are giving, but they are more inclined to participate in a project related to poverty alleviation when they see that there's a prospect to increase their income. So the way that we approach right now our poverty alleviation initiative is to first focus on a market-driven livelihood program. Instead of providing relief to the community, we focus based on that insight on a market-driven livelihood program like Cacao. But if you look at the framework, this is how it goes for the entire process. We focus on the market-driven livelihood program like Cacao because that is based on their insight that they are more likely to participate if they see that their income will increase in the future. But as I mentioned earlier, poverty is also very complex, multifaceted, and multidimensional. So it can also just be solved by providing a livelihood program. What we are currently doing in the communities in Zamboanga Sibugay is to provide complementary support. For example, we have a health and nutrition program as well. Of course, education is a proven tool to get people out of poverty, intergenerational poverty. So we also providing education scholarship. These are the children of the farmers who are interested to take agriculture and business courses in college. And if you look at it, on the top, you can see that the mental model shift is very important. This is when I realized that for Filipino farmers, to say is to believe. Because when I told the farmers that we are going to do this with them. They are very much skeptic, and not really sure about saying yes to the program, because for them, they have been scammed. They feel like they have been scammed. They have been abandoned. They have been failed so many times in the past by different people and organization, and they feel it feels like they are so jaded to believe that there's a way out of poverty in their situation. So the mental model shift is very fundamental. But the way that we do it also in our approach is really ecosystem based. It's really looking like putting people together in ecosystem, all the stakeholders and players, and leveraging on the resources and the capacity of these people so that we can provide and deliver a solution to the community. It's similar to a multi-stakeholder approach, because poverty cannot be solved by one institution. I think this is also very insightful when we talk about how we implement programs in the community, in our organizations. Although we want an initiative to be solely our initiative, I think that the more effective way is to really embrace the multi-stakeholder approach, because then we can leverage the resources and expertise of other stakeholders. And it has to be collaborative as well. We are coming to the community not as a problem solver. We empower the community to solve their own problems. And it has to be holistic, because you cannot just focus on one solution, because again, poverty is very complex. And the community-based approach, the governance, the participation of the people should be at the top priority. And I think also it's very important that when we engage in an initiative, it's always about a connect between what the market needs and what the community are doing. Because if you go to Sibugay is so blessed with agricultural land, but there is not a lot of industries that are thriving there. We have a rubber industry, but it's also very weak at this time. Most of the farms are really unproductive, because what the farmers are basically doing in the farms are not what the market is needing. There has to be a market-driven approach into engaging. So we have to assess on what we are doing right now, if it's really aligned to what the market need and what the communities are doing. But in all of this design, I think the goal is really self-sufficiency. That's why the implementation of our program is limited to 18 months, because that is, in our forecast, the needed amount of time with the needed amount of support that we need so that the farmers can jumpstart. We will empower them, but we want them to be self-sufficient.